So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, regardless of where you are around the world. Welcome to PractiTest guest webinar series with today webinar, the hidden logic of thinking for testers. Today we have the honor to host Nithin. This is how we agreed. I'm going to introduce him, which is the founder of Synopsys QA, a community space for test automation professionals. We've been in the software quality advocates, who's been in the industry in the IT field for over 10 years, if I remember correctly, and has a variety of activity of testing, automation delivery, and web and mobile-based application. And today he's going to have a webinar for us today. A little bit about PractiTest for those of you who are new or who are not familiar with who we are. So PractiTest is an end-to-end QA information hub, a test management platform that allows to incorporate all testing elements into one central platform. Okay, that means that regardless of the type of testing you're using, whether it's manual scripted testing, which most companies still combine, exploratory testing, or utilizing any type of automation script or tool, all of the above can be integrated and connected into PractiTest, and there you can organize the results in order to create meaningful insights out of them. We were just selected as part of we're just ranked as the top 50 development products with the latest G2 crowd reviews, which is nice. You can see some of our customers on the lower part of the screen. And a little bit about what we do. Sorry, if you are interested to learn more about what we do, we invite you to go to our website and try a free trial on your own, or to join our upcoming live training session and Q&A session on March 8th, where you can either join here or go to our website and you can access the link in there as well. And one last detail of information before I hand over to Nithin is that in addition to our webinar series, which we have done as a one-off, next month we're starting a new mini-series webinar program, with the first one being hosted by Lena Weinberg. I don't know if you heard of her. If not, I invite you to. She's very nice and interesting, with the first session about deciphering alerts and making sense of what your software is saying. So you are invited to join this webinar series as well. And without further ado, we won't go into the Q&A. We are collecting questions throughout the session, so you can write them in the Q&A channel on Zoom, and I assume Nithin will be happy to answer them at the end. And now I will hand over to him to provide some of his insight.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and it's good to meet everyone virtually, actually. So let me share my screen first. Is it perfect?
Perfect. We can see you very well.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just. All right, so it's working. All right, thank you so much. Thanks again, and it's been an honor to have this space and meeting you all virtually. So there are strong parallels between software testers and scientific researchers, because both of them actually employ intelligence, imagination, and creativity to gain empirical information about the system being investigated. So science is credible, curiosity-driven, critical, impartial, and dynamic. And science continuously challenges and questions methods, techniques, and the core beliefs. So can't we, as testers, strive to be the same? So how can you question and improve your own approach to testing this way? So learning and understanding how to spot our thinking process plays a significant role here. So today we will be connecting all the dots around thinking and some hidden logic that we still need to explore and analyze. And I hope it will reveal some blind spots of all our thinking due to the fundamental way how our brain works. So before I start, let me give a disclaimer. Thinking takes effort, and most of the time it is unpleasant. So hope I will be giving a pleasant experience throughout the session. So without further ado, let's get started. So my name is Nithin, and I'm working as engineering manager for QA at FAIR Malaysia. I was born and raised in Kerala, India, where I started my career and fell in love with testing. As someone who loves the craft, I'm fortunate enough to continue my passion by leading a wonderful team at Fave and building a community-driven space for testers across the globe called Synapse QA. As we start the session, I would like to quote Daniel Kahneman from the book Thinking Fast and Slow, where he actually says about one specific bias, which is selective attention. So we get so focused on what we think is important, and we fail to see the whole other stuff. So if someone asks you straight away, what is the color of sky? The obvious answer which comes into our mind, color of the sky is blue. But if I ask you to think a little more deeper, you will be thinking and seeing like, but during the sunrise and sunset, it can be red. During a misty day, it can be white. And at night, it is actually black or midnight blue. So imagine for a moment, blue of the sky on a sunny day. Is it really blue? Or the sky looks blue? So there was an experiment conducted by Daniel Simmons and Christopher Chabris, which actually describes more about the selective attention bias. So the subjects were actually shown a video of 6 people. 3 were wearing white shirts and 3 were wearing black shirts. All of them were passing basketballs back and forth. And the folks watching the video were asked to count the number of times the people in the white shirt passed the ball to one another. In between the passing of the ball, actually a gorilla passed by in the video. And in the end, these 2 guys actually asked the folks who were watching the video, did anyone of you notice the gorilla which is passed by? Everyone said no, because all of them were too much focused on how many times the balls were passed between the people who wear white shirt. So we often miss a lot what's going around us, and we have no idea on what exactly we are missing. So thinking is uncomfortable. It takes more effort. We prefer to have immediate solutions, which is coming from our prior knowledge, by grouping our thoughts, and we try to avoid our thinking process as much as possible. So before we go into deep, let's see how our brain works. So again, from the book Thinking Fast and Slow, actually the brain has 2 systems in place. The first one is called as System 1, which I would like to call as Flash, because when we name something as Flash, we immediately know that it is super fast. So our System 1 is actually a system that is intuitive, reflex, which is more fast. So whenever we need spontaneous responses, our System 1 will be taking control and will be giving us responses faster. So it is the system that fills the gap. It works automatically. It is a feeling-based system, and it won't think rationally. So it's always quick choices, and it won't need much of information or enough information to make a rational decision. And it automatically controls most of our decisions. And when it comes to System 2, I would like to refer to Garfield, which you might be knowing that it is a super lazy character, right? System 2 actually prefers to have logical thinking, and it is more rational. It is reasoning based. It is always coming with a conscious thought, and it can always follow capable. It can always follow instructions, a series of instructions, and it can execute a series of steps. So if you are doing a mathematical problem, your System 2 will be working more compared to System 1, because solving a mathematical problem involves more of your effort to think, and it is actually executing a series of steps. So System 2 actually decides what to think about and what to do, and most of the time we have to make it work, else it passes the work to System 1, because System 2 consumes more energy, and we don't want to spend like more energy of ours. So as a brain teaser for all of you, I know it's a virtual webinar, so I'm not going to ask this question, but take a second to think which of this line is longer. So we have 2 sets of lines here. Which of the line is longer? Obviously, our System 1 will be saying the answer that the first one is longer. Again, if we take a pause and think a bit more deeper, actually, the second line and the first line both are same. So that both same response is actually coming from your System 2 by having a deeper thought. one more question. So a bat and ball cost $1.10 in total, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much did the ball cost? So immediately system one says that it is 0.10 cent, so a 10 cent. But if we think more rationally and deeper with a logical reasoning, and our system two says it is actually 1.05, because we are saying that bat costs $1 more than the ball. So that is how system one can lead us to misinterpreting the information. And by having an immediate solution, we think we are saying right, or we are thinking the right way. But what happens is we are getting misdirected. And system one can easily be primed. So when your system one is exposed to one idea, you are more likely to have related ones. So we have SO-P. If I am talking to you now by saying something about food, you will be filling the gap as soup. And if I am talking to you something related to washing some of your dishes or washing your clothes or something, then you will be relating it to soap. So that's how the system one, when it fills the gap, it can be primed. And we have something called cognitive ease. So our brain actually prefers to have least resistance, and it hates using energy, because I already mentioned that. And then it wants to relax all the time. So it tends to make system one work more, and system two will be relaxing all the time. And it likes to make familiar responses, and it wants to make all the things simple. So lower the cognitive ease, it activates the system two. So cognitive ease means how easy you can perceive some information, which can lead you to take certain actions. So if lower the ease, it will activate the system two and lead you to have a better understanding of the things around you. So there are certain heuristics and biases which actually controls our thought process overall. And heuristics, if you want to know the definition, it is actually cognitive shortcuts, which helps to make spontaneous decisions, and it is driven by uncertainty most of the time. And these heuristics actually control our system one. And if we feel like emotionally something is good, we always feel like it is right. And if we gather some information just recently, we feel that information is right. And things we remember more often, we feel like it will happen again. So if you are testing something and the last release was having a production issue, and the next time when you test, you will be always in mind that you will always have in mind that, okay, something is going to go wrong in this certain area because we had a production issue last time. And the events that seem similar have a likelihood of occurrence again and again. And if we invest in certain decision, we continue to believe that that decision is the best decision, because it always says that system one always says that, okay, we have already put our energy in saying that this decision is the best one. So we should stick around that and continue to have that decision moving forward. So these heuristics, along with certain biases, actually lead us to blind spot. And we fell into the trap that we are not seeing the complete picture. If we relate to our day-to-day job, we will be provided with a set of requirements, or we will be having a set of PRD. So we have certain data or a data point which we can refer to when it comes to testing. So our system one actually takes over and it says, okay, this is a familiar data. We have everything written, and system two, you can relax. So you don't need to think deeper. I will take control because you takes more energy, right? So when we have a set of requirements provided to us, we often tend to fall into the trap that we don't need to think deeper because everything is there in the acceptance criteria. We just need to frame our scenarios following the acceptance criteria. But most of the time, the system one is falling into the trap of this set of biases. So we fall into the trap of how the data is presented, how much illusion of past events are being predictable with us, And sometimes we are being like over optimistic and we overestimate things, and we prefer to have pleasing outcomes to all the people around us. And then there is a fear of having loss. So what if we didn't do something and it causes a loss? So we always think in a way that we can eliminate losses. And always we think that good stories are true stories. So we have an assumption called good stories are true stories. So if someone is saying a good story, we believe that it is a true story that is more likely to happen. And we don't take into account that how much chance component of events are there, and we overestimate benefits under the cost. And if there is a person, say our product owner, we believe that the product owner is always giving us incomplete PRDs, we will always have a judgment that this is an incomplete PRD. So say this person was giving us a fully completed PRD, we will always have a belief that our product manager writes the acceptance criteria and requirement really well. So we don't need to think much. It is already covered. So we have a judgment based on people, and we generalize things in particular. And then we believe that what we see is what we have. So most of the time, when we think, we actually see our thinking process as a straight line without much of a distortions. But actually what happens is our thinking is never a straight line. It is always goes around in circle, 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 and comes to a point where we get lost. So I would like to compare our thinking with design squiggle. So it is intended to convey a feeling of a journey. So beginning on the left, you can see it is all a mess or uncertainty. So whenever we have something in front of us to do testing, we as testers will start with the confusion. We should start with the confusion. We should ask more questions to get it clarified. So you can see from the left to right, actually our confusions get lesser, lesser, lesser. And ending on the right, it is a single point of focus, which is our solution. So if we think the beginning, the mess is perfect, what we give as an outcome or what is our solution is not a perfectly expected outcome, which we actually want to give back to our product quality. So we think for a purpose, which should actually raise us questions. And we use concepts, ideas, theories, and we interpret data, facts, experiences, and we make assumptions. And with all these things, we actually come up with conclusions that lead to implications and consciousness. If we fail in any of these aspects, our thought process won't lead us to have an expected outcome. And I would like to highlight the main 4 characteristics of thinking based on my evaluation or research. So one is active listening, and the second one is curiosity. Third one is self-discipline, and the fourth one is humility. So if we could put some effort on these 4 aspects, actually our thinking can have a bigger impact, and our system 2 will have a more control over our system 1 to take rational decisions. So we have to listen to understand. We need to ask deeper questions. So if someone is saying, how you should test a pen, right? So testing a pen is just a requirement. So you can actually ask question, what kind of pen? And what are you trying to achieve with that pen? Or what is the purpose of having that pen? So these asking deeper questions will give you much more clarity on having a certain scenarios which can be applied into your testing. And without having a sudden reflex, by controlling our system 1, which is flash, we need to slow down and try to think more to make our system 2 work. And when we are talking to someone, if you are interacting with your product owners, if you are interacting with your colleagues, the testers, if you are interacting with your developers, try to make use of non-verbal cues and avoid interruptions and distractions, and don't have any judgments, and always think of having a pause, taking a step back to think much more deeper. And we have to be curious. So when we are curious, the brain is primed to have like more learning capability, and it will always retain information. So we should focus on the nature of the problem, what we are trying to solve, why we are trying to solve, and what's the purpose of trying to do like in a certain way. And also we have to be creative in a way that one question leads to another. So let's take a child, for example, right? So if you are briefing something to a kid, actually kid asks why. So you cannot play with fire. Why? Because fire hurts you, right? Then the kid again will ask why. So this whys actually will lead to more clarity to the kid. So we should have the similar curiosity as a kid, where we creatively ask questions, and the more we know, the more is unknown, and we want to know more. And when we question, actually people can think that we are questioning a lot. It seems to be falling into the way that it becomes interrogation sometimes. So when we do that, we have to be disciplined most of the time, and we have to be having a human perspective, or we have to be having the feeling of humanity when we are asking these questions, so it won't feel like an interrogation to other person. So we shouldn't jump into conclusions. And when we think, actually there is one more thing, which is rethinking. So we think a certain aspect, we again need to think one more time, whether to inspect where our thought process on that particular thinking or that particular scenario is true or not, or valid or not. And then we try to reframe, okay, what could be the multiple aspects? If I am having a certain thing in this way, what could be the multiple aspect which it can have, or what outcomes it can have? And then you try to rephrase this entire thought process, or try to convey this to your colleague. So if we are trying to convey this to someone else, actually we will have more thinking process. Or if you are trying to write down the thought process, you will have more scenarios, or you will be uncovering like, okay, these are the set of things which I need to evaluate when it comes to testing a certain feature, or when it comes to testing a certain module. And then we had this rethinking, reframing, rephrasing. So if we are just creating scenarios after having all these, we are not observing ourselves. Are we having the right things done at the right pace? So we need to evaluate, and also we need to reflect, and it has to be self-guided. So if you are not self-guided, you are always assisted with someone, and you will be having that person's thought process. So your system 2 won't be working, and always system 1 says, I should listen to that person because he is always taking control of me. And then we should evaluate ambiguities. So when it comes to requirements, we need to question. So there is one example, which is a heuristic called Mary had a little lamb. So Mary had a little lamb. So if you are asking to derive some scenarios which can validate this sentence, wherever you pause, actually it gives you certain different aspects. So always our requirements are like that. You should pause in a way that you can clarify all the ambiguities, and you can avoid all the assumptions around that. And we have to be humble, because questioning is not really comfortable for us and also the person on the other side. So we have to be open-minded. We have to be receptive. When the other person says something, we shouldn't be getting like offended, and we should consider in a way that this is having a certain different perspective, which could help me to think more deeper, and which could help me to derive more scenarios which can help my testing approach. And we should always ask for relevant evidence. We conclude with we should be ready to adapt, and we should be stepping out of comfort zone, because when we question, most of the time we will be getting negative responses initially, and that negative response will push us to be in our comfort zone all the time. So if we are not stepping out of our comfort zone, we cannot be adapt, and we cannot ask more questions and clarify our assumptions. So what I do personally is to have a strategy called pause strategy. So whenever I feel like my system 1 is taking control over me, or control over my system 2, I pause to reflect. And I try to reflect on what I received as an information. And then I pause to think. I received an information. Now I should think how I can process that information, whereby I will be making my system 2 to think deeper, and to have like a logical set of reasoning, or to have like a series of actions which I can perform next, or which I can ask next. And then by having that data, I won't straight away conclude. I will take again a pause before the conclusion. And after that concluding, what I will do is I will pause to develop and ideate my testing strategy. So with all these 5 steps, I will be having a proper checklist or having a proper thought process to give back to the product owners or the developers that this is the way we should think when it comes to testing a certain module. So again, there is one more aspect which goes hands with my pause strategy. So we should adjust our focus to generate new ideas, because ideas, we have to be innovative in a way that we can generate more and more ideas. And we should always have a question that what if, what could go wrong, right? So we challenge the assumptions and we should always have a status quo. And when we question, we actually reveal underlying assumptions and we separate knowledge from ignorance. So having these three in our mind, along with the post strategy, actually helps me to derive more better scenarios. So we learned why we need to question and why should we consider the other person also when we question, and how we can control our system too to generate more and brighter ideas, right? But why should I question? So we should question to look for common traps, to question the assumptions, to consider alternatives, to be curious to get more information on the system under test, to examine the criticality of the feature which we are evaluating or the system which we are evaluating, to challenge our own thought process to have a better clarity and bring more value to the product which we are testing, and to clarify our understanding, overall understanding, because when it comes, it is actually a rough idea. When we evaluate and when we ask, when we clarify all the ambiguities, it becomes a clear idea for the entire team. And we as testers should ask more questions to get it clarified on behalf of the entire team so that we can build a better product as a common team. So how should I question? The framework which I refer to is a combination of two. One is derived from Socratic method, and the other one is actually referring to the Phoenix checklist by CIA. So Socratic questioning method is a process of questioning that inspires your critical thinking and that let you analyze things in a better way. So it gives you the ability to challenge your assumptions and challenge your negative thought patterns. So you will get things clarified if you are following this 6-step Socratic questioning method. So first thing what we do is we receive the information, we gather everything, all the details, we try to understand the problem statement and what we are going to do as a next step. And then we reflect on all these items with a viewpoint from our side. And also we will gather information from our past experiences. And we will ask for the supporting evidence in the refining stage. With all these, we can actually restate. So if there is a product grooming session which is happening, you receive information from your product owner. You actually try to reflect it back with along with your domain knowledge. And also you compare with your experience or past experience. So you know this specific feature, when we have this, how much modules will be impacted based on this. So with all this reflection, then you ask for evidence. Okay, if we are touching this area, it could impact on some other area. Are we covering that as part of this requirement? And then the product owner will give certain evidence. Okay, this is not impacting this area, but this will impact some other area. So we need to ask why. So why you think so? Or what makes you to think like that? And it will lead to a clarity where we often fall to a wrong way of thinking. So when we refine this back to them, actually it will lead to them in a right way of thinking. And then after getting the answers or responses from them, we try to restate so that the entire audience is aware of what is happening or what the discussion is about. And the same, like when we do the 3 amigo sessions, actually we can try this similar approach. So we restate, so the 3 amigos will come to a common agreement that this is how it's supposed to be done. And then finally, after restate, we don't stop. We try to repeat until we reach a solid state that there is no further questions has to be asked. We are having a proper evidence, and we are also having proper information to proceed further for development and so also for testing. And along with Socratic method, one more thing I told you, right? So I refer to is Phoenix checklist. On the left-hand side, you can see 5 aspects, which is actually to explore the problem which you are facing. And on the right-hand side, you can see what planning we can do in order to solve these problems on the left-hand side. So we need to identify the impact. And while identifying the impact, we can have a set of questions that goes along based on our knowledge. And we check the information which is provided. And when we are checking the information, we can actually think of multiple approaches to ask better questions around the information. So how can we validate the information provided? And what all aspects we need to cover when it comes to this specific information. And then we define the problem. So this is the problem statement which we have, and we try to have solutions for that. Okay, how we can have a better testing strategy in terms to build a better, in order to deliver a better quality product. And then we try to break it down, because if you are seeing as a whole, it could be a bigger scope. So if you are breaking it down, we can easily commit to action. And then we recognize and reframe in order to get it in a way that we can measure and amplify the progress, overall progress on how we are testing, how well we are testing, how much coverage we have in terms of a certain thing which we are focusing, and also how many valid scenarios we discuss and how many ambiguities which we clarified in terms of having like the requirement which was very roughly given to us. So these two sides can go along with the Socratic method, but these two are just frameworks. So we cannot have like these two frameworks fitting into all the aspects. What we need to do is we should understand our companies or organizations' nature and the people, and we tailor it according to the fact that it fits our product and our people. So always consider product and your people, and then take this framework as a guideline and create your own framework out of it. So what people think of as a moment of discovery is actually the discovery of the question. So I questioned a lot, but what should happen next? We will be having this question. So we questioned a lot, what I'm going to have next. So when we get all the answers, actually we are gaining knowledge, which will be disconnected dots. And from our experience or from our domain knowledge, we should connect these dots in a way that it clarifies the picture and it gives a connectivity for us. So we can connect back and we can derive strategies out of it. So in order to have these all questioning methods and all, we should have a proper thinking mindset, which can go along with our approaches. And I prefer to refer to the design thinking approach, which is actually human-centered and more collaborative, creative, iterative, and practical. So why I prefer to refer to this is, if we are empathetic, we will be creating products that are valuable to our users. So we should always think about our user, and we testers should focus more on a user-centric perspective and bring ideas or question on behalf of our users to get more valid scenarios and to get things more clarified, and thereby building quality products which can be usable or which can be acceptable by our users. So in order to be critical, creative, iterative, and collaborative, I prefer to refer to design thinking mindset. And here, this is the design thinking process where I just need to emphasize on 3 aspects. So you need to empathize to understand the problem, and you need to think from a perspective of your user. And we learn by exploring things. And when we explore, we are putting our users in the center. And we are not behaving as a tester. We are putting our users in the center, and we learn about the product. And we iterate this entire process to spark new ideas. And having this revelation of ideas, we solve a problem which is in front of us. So that's how I need to determine. But the design thinking process which designers follow is exactly based on this flowchart. So when it connects to testing, I need to prefer to call it as empathize, learning, and also testing by putting our users in the center. And what we are building in the end is a product which is actually desirable, feasible, and viable for the business, tech, and for the users which we are building for. And so there is one concept called metacognition, which you can easily define as knowing more about thinking or thinking about thinking itself. And it is an awareness that helps to determine the best strategies that you can approach in terms of learning and problem solving. So testing involves a lot of learning, learning certain product, learning certain domain, or learning certain strategies which you can apply on your day-to-day basis. And it involves a lot of problem solving. So if you see metacognitive knowledge, there is declarative knowledge, procedural knowledge, and conditional knowledge. And always the declarative knowledge is referring to our domain knowledge. So if you are part of an organization on a specific domain, try to explore more on the domain and understand more about the competitors, what they are doing, how you can relate a specific feature of yours into your competitors, and also understand the overall domain process. Say my domain is actually fintech. So I try to be relevant with fintech updates and what are the features coming in, what are the different market standards or market trends which is going around fintech. So I can bring some insight into my team so that we can think based on like, okay, this is the market trends. And when we are building something, we can actually refer to that. And we can say, okay, we can adapt. This is how our competitor do, or this is how the market says, or market demand. So we can follow that information into our teams. And then there is procedural knowledge. So procedure is something we follow to execute, right? So this comes with your strategies. And then conditional knowledge is knowing how to use this domain knowledge and strategy knowledge. And it's a combination of declarative and procedural knowledge. And it comes with planning. We need to monitor and we need to evaluate. And it is a combination of our experiences. It comes from our awareness. It comes from our previous thoughts. It comes from our feelings. So you can refer to feelings-based testing aspect. So there is an heuristics itself. So if you are testing something, you are, say for an example, you are testing a text field, you are providing some input. What if it is not feeling? So we will be getting frustrated straight away because what we type is not showing up in the text field. So it impacts our feeling as a user. So these kind of aspect actually we can refer to, we can create a checklist, or we can have a scenario created already with a set of scenarios, all these combining into the feelings aspect. And when we get something to test, we can actually refer to that checklist. It will aid us to test better. So if you're asked to do something, incorporate metacognition by knowing how to think and thinking more about your thinking. You assess the task, you evaluate the strength and weakness. Basically, it is evaluating what you know and what you don't know, and then plan for a better approach, which checklist you can use, or which one you have to refer to, and which data you can take it as a evident, which you can always rely on, and then apply proper strategies from your testing toolkit or something, and then reflect on the process so that you know where you are heading to. Otherwise, in the end, you won't be having desired outcomes sometimes. So we have to plan, we have to monitor how we perform and how we organize all our strategies, and we evaluate how much is our progress and how well our strategies are fitting into our execution phase. So to conclude, thinking is a combination of all these. So we should understand the problem, we explore its boundaries, we question the assumptions, we imagine new perspectives and be more innovative, we identify the weakness by being more humble, and we justify a solution. We acknowledge a set of limitations we have, because we cannot always think straight. We will always have confusions and we will be ending up in chaos sometimes. So we should acknowledge our limitations and know that, okay, I have certain restrictions over here. How can we work around those restrictions? And we reflect on all the alternatives we have. So if you want to learn and be better, prepare yourself to be uncomfortable. thinking takes effort, where you have to fight with your confusions and biases. And it is not a pleasant experience because it takes more effort. And remember, thinking takes practice and it takes more time. So good things take time, but great things takes a little longer. So with that said, thank you so much for listening to me, and thanks to PractiTest team for having me here. It's been a pleasure, and I'm here to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nithin, for this wonderful session. I do want to ask a few questions that we have on the Q&A, if that's okay with you. So the first question is about when using systems, the second system you've mentioned, it might lead to overthinking sometimes. How do we draw the line between thinking and overthinking?
Okay, that's a good one, actually. So we should always have a framework which helps where should we have a boundary for our system too. Otherwise, it will be, our mind is always wandering around, right? We cannot restrict it. So like what I said, it's a mess when we think. So in order to have a clarity, before approaching any problem, we should define a framework, or we should have a proper checklist like what I mentioned earlier. And based on that checklist, we restrict our system to revolve around that specific region. So system 2 asks more questions, but we won't go beyond a certain limit. We will always stick to that certain checklist areas. But that we can only derive from our experience on evaluating the product. And that is where we need to learn our product more in order to have better testing scenarios and restrict our system to around those.
Agree. Thank you. And the next question is about which system, it's not about, which system plays a crucial role in supporting activities performed by a tester, and why would you think so?
I would say system 2, because if it is system 1, actually what happens is it draws easy into conclusions, and we cannot have a better coverage or scope of our testing. So if we are making our system 2 to work more, we can get more clarity around all the confusions, and we can actually challenge the assumptions and thereby clearing all the ambiguities which we have. So system 2 plays a crucial role for testers.
I think this partially answers Mandeep's question just now, which asks, do we need to completely ignore the first system 1?
No, we cannot. So why I say this is because say I am a tester who works on fintech, right? So I might be knowing more about payment domain, and then that is my experience. So I have this series of execution knowledge on fintech systems, which actually gathers back into my system 2. So when I get a certain like a experience stage or something, if I'm getting a requirement again on a fintech solution, my system 2 don't need to work because it already have that information in place. So my system 2 will say, okay, I already know how this works. System 1 can take over because this data can be passed over to system 1, thereby making things faster. Simple example, we as a kid, we learn, like when we learn how to tie our shoelace, it's hard for us initially. So it's hard when we try one time, second time, third time, but now we can easily tie our shoelace. So when we learn, it is actually system 2. Now it is actually system 1. So that's how our knowledge goes.
I love this example. And I have one last question, if we may, which is regarding the steps that you take in order to have questioning approaches integrated into a real project lifecycle. Because, some part of it, Kahneman is theory in basis, but then we have to we have to transform the theory into real life in our actual testing and QA work.
What we can do, what I did personally is to understand all the kind of like a requirement which we could have for a specific period of time, and then create a checklist based on that. These are the aspects which I need to ensure in terms of usability, or these are the aspects which I need to ensure in terms of testability, and these are the aspects which I need to cover in terms of functionality on impacting certain other things. And whenever we have a requirement coming in, we can actually have this checklist as a guiding pointer for us. and we can ask questions around that. So how well the functionality enables testability. So how well we can automate this feature, because it is not having certain things which can be automated. So having a checklist really helps, and it can be derived as a framework combination. Again, going back to my point, by tailoring it according to the product and people which we have.
Great. Let's see if we have one more question from the team. No, we have answered the questions on the Q&A. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you once again, and remind everyone, we are sharing this recording. Nithin, he's shared his Twitter account throughout the session. I assume, and I'm offering for you, that if anyone has questions, you can try and reach out to him on Twitter. He's typically very responsive and shares his feedback there. And we want to thank you for being with us on this PractiTest webinar series, and we invite you all to join us in our upcoming webinars. We're hosting one at least once a month. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all.